Hello. So, today I'm going to continue building out the different endpoints on the HTTP API. One thing I did learn recently is that you can do this in the root names. Controller. And now that'll be toggles as a root. So that's useful, bit less specification going on. Right, so we've got getting by ID, but we also need to support fetching by name as well, which is going to work identically other than it's going to use the name. So I think we'll start by implementing that, which is going to be basically the same structure, with the exception of rather than an ID we're going to be using a name. So the root is /name, the parameter will be name, and it'll be a string name. Now we already have a get toggle request which works by ID. So I think if we have get toggle by name, well, we could rename this old one to get toggle by ID. I'm going to leave it as it is because fetching by ID is the default case. So we'll pass the name in here, and apart from that, that's all we need to do in the controller. So in the body of our, or in the domain, I'm beginning to think we need to separate these out into separate folders. Create toggle, get, yeah. Well, we'll come back and deal with that in a second. So let's have a new class which is our get toggle by name handler. And this is going to have a public class get toggle by name request, which has a single string parameter, which we'll write to a property. And this needs to implement I request. Yep. And it's an I request of a now we can share the toggle response actually on this, so we'll have a get toggle response. And in fact, I'm not going to bother with having a separate handler for this either. So that's all I'm going to define for this. And what I'm going to do in, actually let's rename the class to match. Right, and then we'll find our get toggle handler and just implement a second copy of the interface. So an I async request handler of get toggle by name request get toggle response. So I implement the wrong thing on that. Yes, I did get all toggles rather than get toggle. Right, and then we'll just implement the missing members. And basically it's identical other than the action that we're going to use to compare. So what we'll do is extract this into a separate method and call this find toggle. But rather than passing the message in, we will pass in a func of toggle boolean called filter. And we should call the filter in here. What's its problem? The type method cannot be func t source t boolean toggle view. There we go. So here we shall pass in that, and then we shall take our second version of the handler, which is going to filter by name instead, and do the same thing. But instead of filtering on ID, we'll do name. Let's do string dot equals name and the message name. And the reason we're using the string equals rather than just using a double equal sign is that I can then use ordinal ignore case to make this case insensitive. Right. That should be fine. What's its problem? Not async. There we go. So now we have both methods which should do the filtering, calling the same filtering function, so we haven't duplicated anything. So let's go and add a test for that, because we've got an existing set of tests for the handlers. So get, no, not create toggle, get toggle handler. And toggle ID, get toggle. Yep, so let's rename these tests. When the requested toggle doesn't exist, by ID. When the requested toggle exists, by ID. And then we will do another version of it, which will be by name. Right, now let's fill in. So we're going to use GUID for the name anyway to make sure it's something unique, but we'll toString it. And instead we now have a get toggle by name request. Same here. And in our case our toggle name is name. So let's extract that into a variable. For our toggle name, we can delete this GUID from there and just use it directly, so we're not going to be querying about it again later. And in this case we just want to compare that the name is equal to the toggle name we passed in. Right, let's run the tests. Yeah, .NET Core 2. .NET test source Crispin .tests. Apparently the next version of Rider will support .NET Core 2, and that should come out next week, I believe. So not too much longer of having to use the command line for this. And all of our tests passed as well, which is even better. Right, so we've got some bad white space going on in the controller. Let's get rid of that. And let's try actually typing the right command rather than a random assortment of letters instead. So, toggle controller support fetching by name as well. Now, did I actually have controller tests? I think I did. Yes, I do, but I'm going to refactor these slightly. Just because there's going to be quite a lot of them in this place, I want to pull them out into their own set of classes. So first thing we shall do is what will that do? Yes, that'll. I'll do extract superclass, and we're just going to take the instance fields and the constructor as well. I want to call it toggle controller tests, but that's going to clash for the time being, so we'll leave it as called test base, despite that being a horrible name. Right, and accessing protected fields, let's encapsulate them as properties. No, let's rename. Encapsulate field. Why would I call it controller 1? Make that protected. Right. Now we've got tests for each individual, or we've got one large test class, but we can move that around. So let's move this into its own file. Now we've got getting all toggles. So those are the first ones to move. Just cut those out of there and do public class toggles. Well, we're going to have a toggles controller names. Well, we've already got the namespace, so controller get all toggles tests, which is a toggle controller test base. Lovely. Right. Now we have creating. Yep. So let's do those. Public class create toggle tests. Do controller base. Put all of them in there. And finally we have, this can be renamed as get single toggle tests. Alright, toggle test, get all toggle tests, yeah, that'll do. So if we do that, and then we can go onto here and move types into matching files, retick everything. And now this can be renamed, and we will make it abstract as well. And rename the file to match as well. And then we want to run those tests. .rest. Eight tests, 8 passed. Excellent. So we haven't broken anything by refactoring things. Oh, let's see. These we're in the toggles namespace, which has only got the controller in it. So yeah, I'm not going to bother moving those into a subfolder. If we had other things in here, like some models, say, which we do. We've only got one so far. Yeah, let's leave it like this. Yep. So yeah, toggles, controller, tests, refactor. HTTP methods to separate test files. Right, now that we've done that, we've got our get single toggle tests. So this is getting a toggle by ID. Why is that called mediator 1? Let's just commit, sorry, let's cheat. And then just redo the last commit. Right. Let's expand these tests a bit, and well, do we need to? No, not really. That would end up testing too many things. We'd end up testing the handler via the controller rather than just testing the controller, which is all we really care about at the moment. So by name, we don't need to do anything different to the view, so we'll just do get toggle name. We actually should be asserting that the mediator received the right message. So mediator dot send, no, mediator received dot send with an arg where it matches a get toggle request where the request is it's a get toggle by name request actually for this one, by name request, where the toggle name equals toggle name. Right, so now that we've done that, we can put this in here. Oh, I need to await it as well. With the difference here, this being a get toggle request, it's got a toggle ID, and that needs to match the toggle ID. So that needs to be a toggle ID. And I'm going to move this into the constructor. And I'm going to remove this because we don't actually care that the setup of our fake object set it up correctly. So we can also move this in line here. And so we don't need that either. Or that. Let's extract this to a variable as well. That's much better. Let's rerun these, make sure they work. Oh, exceptions. Rest toggles controller. Line 46. Ah, because we haven't set up a response type for that. Get name request. Yeah. That's better. I also noticed actually I have made a mistake here, in that we do want to assert that the type of the response we get is a toggle view, not this get toggle response. We don't want that. So what we can say is that a response value should be type of, no, it should be of type, but should be of type toggle view. Hooray. So this is toggle controller tests, test fetching a toggle by ID and name. And I suppose what we should do, yeah, we've ticked that one off. Right, so now let's go onto a sub URL, which is getting by state. Knew I'd forgotten something. Presentation mode. And Ryder thinks everything is broken. That's nice. And yet it all still builds. Right. So our fetching of a toggle by, or the state of a toggle for instance, is pretty much the same as both of these existing methods. So I'm going to copy and paste them. And the difference is we're now going to add /state to the end of our URLs. And name the methods to get state. And they're both still going to take in an ID and a name. They're still going to call the same request. The difference is they're going to call the state property. And that's the only difference. Not very useful from our perspective. Basically a free feature to implement, but a user of the API now can fetch more specific data, so they can get smaller responses. So in our case, it's actually going to save us a little bit of bandwidth. And the downside is that we're still loading the entire view just to get the state property, but it's not going to be that much of an overhead for us. So I'm going to add some tests with this because there is a bug in this already. So this is get single toggle state tests, which are going to inherit from toggle controller tests. It's nice that there are 2 of them. Let's see if this works. Unload project. Reload project. Effectively, the turn it off and turn it back on again of Ryder. Close enough. Right, so as with the fetching of a single toggle, we will need some setup. The difference is with this, that we actually need to set up our toggle view to actually contain something useful. So var view equals new toggle view, and let's give it an ID. Okay, let's not import missing references. Actually, before we do this, let's just check if AutoFix just supports .NET Core yet. No, not yet. Oh well. So we can't use that, so we'll populate stuff ourselves. New toggle 1. Let's give it that as a name. Description can be the first toggle. Right, state anonymous equals false. Groups equals. Can I just do that? Does that work? Or do I have to specify new dictionary? No, I can. Group 1 true. And we're not going to fill out any, users are not going to have any of these switched on, I think. And do we have anything else to fill out? Tags. First, dev. That's the kind of thing I'm going to use the tags for in production anyway. It's things, well, maybe not first, but what environment it is. So I'd probably do things like that. Right, now that we have that set up, we need to actually return the view. We could actually do this. There we go. So instead of that, we'll just do view. Not that it is a view anymore, it's a response. Come to think about it, I'm going to extract it anyway because I want to compare things. So var view response. That can be the response, as can that. Right. This needs to be a field as well so that we can actually use it. So I'm going to show them and make it read only. Yep, good. So when fetching state by name, well, let's do by ID first. Then we'll have one for when fetching state by name, and we then want some failure cases as well. So when fetching state by ID, which doesn't exist, and then we want the same again for name as well. Right. So response equals controller dot get state toggle view ID. Oh, that needs an await in it as well, and we're going to want to convert that to a JSON result and make that async. This is the same except we do GUID new GUID. Make the method async as well. It's the same, but we're going to use the name. And this is going to be the same, but rather than the name, we're going to use a GUID. Well, actually, that's not very clear. I mean, you're going to see the GUID and think it's an ID, so some name which doesn't exist. And the reason I type out a huge thing like that rather than just mashing the keyboard is that now when I see a failure, the Shoodly library will probably put the name in that I requested somewhere. So I called this method and expected something null. So I should see in my stat trace something along the lines of when getting state for some name which doesn't exist. So it should make debugging a little easier. So when we've fetched it by ID, we can now want to just say response value should be of type, I've forgotten what it is. What is state? A state view. And not only that, the mediator should have received send with an arg which matches a get toggle request, where the request toggle ID equals toggle view dot ID. And that needs a waiting. And this should be the same, except it's a get toggle by name request. And the names should match. Now, in the case of this, we should still have received that. Actually, we shouldn't. We should have received the random GUID for toggle ID. Like that. And the response value should be null. Yeah, and we won't test for 404 or anything here because we're going to deal with that using a decorator in a minute. So we want the name here. And here. Right, I don't think I've missed anything, have I? No, that looks good. Now, 2 of these tests should fail because the actual controller is not checking if the toggle that comes back is null. So we should get a null reference exception on 2 of the tests. If we don't, it means I've set the tests up wrong. And I think I have actually. Yeah, it should be null, but with something else. Because my test setup here is just taking any of these. So what we actually want to say is where the arg is. request dot toggle ID equals toggle view.id. Do the same for this one. Now this is the name should equal the name. So now we're checking if there's a specific toggle request coming in. So now we should get 2 test failures because there isn't a response type as opposed to returning everything. There we go, 2 failures. And if we go back and look at this, yep, null reference exception at line 56 of the toggles controller. So if we go to the toggles controller, line 56 is indeed this. So in our case, we can fix that by just sticking a question mark in here. Ooh, we still have failures at line 56. That's weird. Ah, because the mediator is not set up correctly. So normally, in our handlers, we're going to always return a response, but the toggle property might be null. Whereas our test, we're just not returning anything. So I could either change my controller to have a question mark here as well, which would work, but isn't quite the same as the behavior that we're actually outputting. So as I want to match the behavior, all I need to do is take this, and I think if we do, I'm not sure if order matters on this. So we say arg any request returns a new toggle response. And we'll do the same here. And get toggle by name request. Yeah, I'm not sure if the order matters for these, or if because we're using is and any, it'll automatically take the right precedent, but we shall see. That's interesting. And where did that fail? Line 77. Now as we got 2 failures, and it's this test and this test, would indicate that the order of these does matter. Let's try putting that above, as with that one. That's better. Right. Oh, we need to put a tick in our README file as well. So we have get by state as well. Toggles controller. Implement get state by name and ID. let's implement tags get, or do we want to implement state posting and deleting? Well, as it's such an easy thing to add, we'll do tags first. So in fact, this test is almost identical in setup to this. So much so that I'm thinking of just sticking this view and such into the base class. Maybe not. We'll copy it for now. And then we can modify them to have common base or common setup code later on. I'm not sure if we're going to want to reuse this structure for the update and the delete tests. So for the time being, I'm happy to have a copy of the setup code. So this is our get. Did I not call it get state tests? Get single toggle tags tests, which inherits our test base. And boom. And that's constructor. And we need async imported. Right. Now the only difference is here is that we're no longer fetching state, we're fetching tags. Which means our value should be something else, which I believe is an enumerable. Oh no, we are actually exposing as a hash set. Now we're going to need to do serialization tests at some point, but I think we're going to keep them out of this class. So this is a hash set of string, as is this. I think that's it. We need to actually call the right controller method. Get tags. Let's do this. Control H. Right, let's go and implement that. Which is identical to our state ones. Except they are tags. Like that. And here. And let's run the tests. Test pass. How fast that was to implement. Tags. Get. Let's just auto cheat on that, and we'll use the same commit message, but get. Hang on, where's my last commit message gone? There we go. Get tags. Right, that was the easy stuff out of the way. So we can now move on to get to the post and the delete sections, but we also need to test that the serialization is working as we expect. so that we're actually getting JSON out, because we're just testing that the JSON object contains the object that we are pushing. And we also need to do things like implement decorators for timing and population of IDs and such for extra routing. I think we'll tackle serialization first. So let's do it in the tags tests, because this should be a nice easy one. Now I'm expecting an array of tags, but I don't actually know how the hash set serializes. And I'm not entirely certain how to force the serializer to actually serialize a response. Because can we do response dot? We've got serializer execute result. That sounds about right. So that's var content. Let's do this. Create a local variable context equals new action context. I guess it's that. Response. Can I read that easily from here? We've got content. Body. Yeah, that'll do. And body is a stream, so we can use the stream reader on that. Using var sr equals new stream reader. Put the body in there. Let's put this in a method, I think. Private void read as JSON. JSON result. Response. Oop. And that actually wants to be an async task of string. And we're just going to do return sr.read to end. Oh, there's an async version as well. I'll wait. Yep, that should do. I think. So var JSON equals read as JSON response. JSON should be, now let's guess what the JSON should be. Do that. So we should have our tags, which are first and def. Not that we can guarantee order with a hash set. Yeah, let's see what happens when we run those. I suspect it'll break, because I've either got the syntax of something wrong, or those execute result async callbacks don't work quite as I expect. One failure. Null reference exception. On what though? Line 70. that. Right, so I haven't set up something on the context correctly. But what? No idea. Well, I suppose the easiest thing to do is to change this back to a JSON result and step into the method. So it needs a JSON result executor. And then call execute async on that. So we do this. Can I register a service on there somehow? It's an iService provider, so I might be able to fake the whole value. Let's have a quick look on Google, see if there's anything about that ASP.NET Core test serialization. Now, I know Jeremy Miller has a library for doing tests on web endpoints, but I think it's Jasper only. Let's find out. Jasper FX. Oh, maybe not. Let's go on to GitHub. And Alba. Right. Let's have a quick look at the documentation. Let's do that. And open this on a new tab so I can search for both things. Let's have a look at this. That might do for actual our integration tests. Okay, we'll look into those later. Right, let's ignore serialization for the time being. Yes, I did mean checkout. Right, now if we go back and have a look at our list of things to do, we need to do post and delete. We can already create a toggle, but let's do updating of state. So the first thing to do is figure out whether we're going to allow multiple updates to state or just a single item. There's also the question of what to do with a UI piece, because if you wanted to make a single request, adding and removing a lot of different things, then this currently wouldn't support it. You'd have to do one request for additions and one request for deletes, which I'm fine with. So I think rather than an object like that, what are we returning at the moment? Let's have a look at our toggle state. No, it's a view, state view. So we're returning a dictionary of users. So I think it's basically the same structure. Yeah, and you could populate every. Yeah, I think that kind of makes sense to me. Let's go into our controller. Now we've got state. So we'll just do one of them at the moment. We'll do state by ID to start with. And this is going to be our HTTP post. So that we need this horrible from body attribute. And then we'll have our update state model. Update. Also another one called toggle post request. Yeah, update state model. Create type. Yep. So this has basically the same structure as this. In fact, it has the same structure as this. But the only difference is we're also going to mark the Boolean nullable. Name state post from body. So here we're going to not have a get toggle request, but an update toggle state request. That's going to take an ID and I think we will write out the properties rather than using mapping or passing in the whole object. We can't pass the whole object in because the domain doesn't have a reference to this model. So we will have model.anonymous, model.groups, model.users. That request can get sent into there, and then the response, I guess, is, yeah, it is that. Yeah, we'll return an object containing the new complete state, so that a UI can submit a modification and then get back the whole state and say, right, just replace it, rather than having to also apply all of the updates itself. So if we now go back to our core, we've now got these handlers, and like I said earlier, they're getting to be quite a lot of them, so let's start splitting them up. Creation. What do we want to say? Create. Fetch. Yeah, let's do that. So these are our create ones. And we'll have get all. No, that's a class, not a directory. Get all. We shall also have a directory for get single. single has 4 because we've got get by name and get by ID. And our tests now need to reflect this as well. Not here, not here, here. Well, in fact, we've only got one test file per thing. No, I'll leave those like that. So let's fix their namespaces. And we'll add Crispin, the domain project, and the tests project, but nothing else. Oh, I suppose those need to be added as well. We'll do git add pu. So P means, I think it stands for progressive add, but it lets you pick whether you want to commit single lines or not, or single blocks. And in my case, I do want to commit single lines, but I don't want to commit that block. So CM handlers move into subdirectories. That's better. So let's create another directory and we'll call this update state. Now this is going to need, what's the name of the class I decided on? That. Do this. And this. Rest of get toggle response. Yeah, I think we can reuse that for now. Although, no, let's not reuse. Because I'm not going to return the whole toggle, I'm just going to return its state, I think. Yeah, we'll just return the state for now. Yep. And then that needs to be an async request handler of that. Implement the missing method, and this we are going to have a state property public state view state, and we shall fill out this by generating a constructor. Okay, I don't know what that did. Create constructor, yeah. Toggle ID. Bool question mark. Yes, a dictionary called groups users. We'll just call this anonymous. And let's set some auto properties from these. Now you could use property mapping and just map these straight to, and not bother with the constructor and just use properties. But by using the constructor, we're going to force compilation errors when in the future I inevitably decide to add or remove something from this. And by forcing a compilation error and changing the constructor, I then guarantee that all the places in the code that create one of these actually get updated. Whereas there's potential to forget if you don't use the constructor style. Now on here we have the state property, which may be null if they request something that doesn't exist. Right. So now that we've done that, we have a handler that doesn't do anything, so we're going to add some tests for that handler. So this is our update toggle state handler. Right, and we have a handler, so new get update toggle state handler. And we know that we're going to need the mediator, so let's just pass that in straight away. Not mediator. What am I talking about? iStorage. And do this. Storage equals substitute for iStorage. Our session equals substitute for iStorage session. And do this storage begin session returns session. And the only reason I implement this at the bottom here is because it looks a bit nicer having both underscore parts together. If you do that in the middle, it just looks, I don't know. So we now have a happy case, or let's do the failure case first. So when the toggle doesn't exist, and then we'll have a when updating a toggle with no current state. And I'm not quite sure what structure the tests are going to take yet, so I'll just leave it at these two. Now our session is going to return something, but it's going to be empty by default. So we can just do handler dot handle new update toggle request, and now we need to fill in this lot. Unless there's an easy way to get around that. No. We'll use a new GUID. We will make that null. To be honest, everything can be null for the time being because we're not going to actually handle it. So we're going to query for the toggle, and then it's not going to exist. So to serve butter. Crispin is a Restful feature toggling service. The name Crispin comes from the fact that feature toggles are used for canary releasing things, and when I was a child we had a pet cockatiel called Crispin. So that's where the name comes from. It's not very related, but I needed a name and there didn't seem to be a project called this already. So, and why have I put async there? It's a wait. And yeah, it's in .NET Core because I want to target Linux. And I'm trying to stream the whole development of it. Right. So, what should we have got back from that? When it didn't exist, we should have gotten a response back with the state, which should have been null. And no exception thrown, but this is going to throw exceptions because we have a not implemented exception in there at the moment. So let's take this. Now we're going to need to do some setup beforehand for this to work. So the first thing we want is to extract this GUID. That's the toggle ID. Don't forget setup. We need to actually put this into our data store so that it responds. Now, when updating a toggle with no current state, so what state are we going to update? Well, I think we should do each one. Explicitly set this to true and false, add a user and add a group. So, what do we use it first when updating? So we're going to have to name this better, and I'm going to have to extract all the setup as well. So I'm going to not name this better for the time being, because I don't know what setup I need yet. So in this case we're going to set the anonymous to true. And we're going to say the response state should be true. And we also need to check that we actually got an event emitted for updating the state. So we can say it's underscore session dot. Is that the one we want to check? Let's have a quick look at our actual toggle implementation. So we handle the switching. So we're currently testing for. Oh, I'm going to confuse myself. Post is creating things. Delete is removing things. That's interesting. So not only have we got switching on or off, but we've got removal of the state of switching. So I might have actually designed this wrong. So at the moment, because of this implementation here, we have a toggle can either be switched on or switched off. But this post and delete implies that we can remove a group from having any state in here. But when we actually handle the switching ourselves, we can either switch it on or off. We can never remove the key from the state list. And I think we should probably be able to do that. So this one's going to handle switching on and off, and this one's going to be removal of state. Which means we don't need to worry about this yet. So this can effectively emit switching on and switching off events. So it's not wrong, it's just confusing me at the moment. Which I suppose is better than confusing other people. So, what do we want to do on this? What I want is to check that we received a single event. Do I? Yeah, that would be useful. But I don't think I've got the infrastructure available for doing that. No, we're going to do. I suppose the easiest way to do this is to implement a new storage session type. So rather than passing a fake in, we'll just pass one that logs the content that it sees. Well, actually, for the time being, what we can do is say session dot on. Is it on? No, when x dot save arg dot any aggregate root. Let's do this. Do call info arg aggregate root. So this is the thing being passed in. Get, I think we need to cast it actually. So it's turn I event source evented. Yeah, I evented. And we shall get pending events. There we go. And just add them to a collection. If I end up having to do this a lot, which I think I probably will do, list event, then I will extract this out and build an actual class to do it, but for the time being we can get over just using nsubstitute. A new list of events. Let's make that read-only. Right. INumeral object is not as okay. Not a list of events, a list of objects. Right. So now we can say events dot should have single item, should be of type switched on. Yeah, I think so. Now, we do have to actually put some setup in this as well. So because we're using nsubstitute, we can do session dot load aggregate toggle toggle ID returns. Let's do this var toggle equals toggle dot create new test. Oh, and it needs a callback here actually, which can do nothing for the time being. And that's the description, and that's the name. And now we can get rid of that. And that's now the toggle ID. That returns the toggle itself. And that's also the toggle ID. Right. I expect this, well no, it definitely will fail because we've got a not implemented exception. But let's prove that. .NET test, source, crispin.tests, crispin.tests. Of course we might get a bunch of other exceptions as well because I've implemented something silly. Two failed. Oh, good, that'll do. Yep, not implemented and not implemented. Good. Right, so let's go and implement. So the first thing we need to do is say using var session equals storage.beginSession. We don't need that for the time being. And we'll say var toggle equals session dot load aggregate toggle from the messages toggle ID. If the toggle is null, return task dot from results new response. And then we'll do throw new not implemented exception. Now when we run the tests we should only get one failure because our first one was just checking that if the toggle wasn't found we got null back. Good, only one failure, and it's a not implementing exception. So now we need to do the actual processing of our message. But in our case, we actually we're only implementing one property, so we'll do if message.anonymous has value, if it's got a value, then if it's true we want to switch on, and if it's true false we want to switch off. So if message.anonymous value, then toggle switch on new. In fact, no arguments, but it's not for a user and it's not for a group. Else, technically I shouldn't implement this, but toggle switch off. And then return task from result toggle dot state. Oh no, we need to do a new state during new update toggle state response. And in this case we're going to do a new state view. Now can I get a state view easily? No, that one. Not as such. Does the toggle not expose its state somehow? It exposes it as toggle state. Oh, which has the right kind of structure anyway. Ideal. That equals toggle.state. Could have sworn that was a property. No, I'm only maintaining it internally. Well, I don't want to solve that problem for the time being then. So I'm not going to. Let's do that. And make those normal brackets. And quite often I will come back to problems and I try and ignore problems as long as I can. So in this case, I am trying to ignore whether I want to return state or not. So in fact we can do this. We'll do events should be empty. Let's do this and do that. Our event switch event, and then we'll do switch event should satisfy all conditions. Switch event dot user. Oh yeah, I need to cast it. Switch toggle switched on. User should be null or white space, and the group as well should be null or white space. What? My right arrow isn't Oh, okay, my right arrow is instead cycling through the IntelliType options rather than actually typing something useful. Not sure if I expect these to pass or not. Clearly not. Should have a single item but had 0 items. Ah, yes. Should probably actually call save on this after doing things. So do session save toggle. Now if we committed the session here, could then actually return the projection. Because our projections at the moment are running synchronously, so I could actually do session.commit followed by in here doing this, was it state, which I removed, but state equals session.load projection all toggles, find the specific toggle ID I was after, I'm sure that was a dictionary. Clearly not. So find the toggle you're after and then return the state like that. Yeah, we'll add that later. Especially if I change my mind and actually do asynchronous projections as well, then this wouldn't work. Right. Can't wait till next week, and then Rider will get .NET Core 2 support, and I will not need to run these from the command line so often. Right, what's the problem with this? I had 2 items in it. Yes, the creation of the toggle as well. Yeah, let's not have that committed. Tests. We'll do this. I invented. This is going to need to be extracted sooner or later. Do that. That. Clear pending events. No, that's a horrible way of doing it. Let's do this instead. Load from that, and then we'll just do here new array, new toggle created. We would do if I could type. Right, now as it's a load, it won't have had anything committed either. Does Rider have full .NET Core 2 support yet? No, not yet. It can edit and compile, but if I try and run the tests, you get that. You know, a bright orange box saying no, this isn't supported yet, and none of my tests are detected. But they did tweet that the next early access edition, which should drop next week, and that will have .NET Core 2 support. So I'm looking forward to that. And our tests now pass. With lots of horrible white space all over the place. Right. Toggles controller. And update toggle state handler tests. And any in that one? Nope. Right. So toggles controller support updating anonymous user state. Right. because that's all we've implemented. Now we've got to implement all the rest of it, and I don't want to have to repeat this for every single test. So this, for instance, can go into the constructor, and we'll want the toggle ID, so we'll do this, extract field, call it toggle ID, be implemented in the constructor, make it read only, and then we will use that down here. Right, so that's the actual test. Do this so they're a bit easier to see. Well, what is the order of these groups then users? Groups, users. And then we have our single event. Is there any point extracting that? Yeah, probably not for now. Right. So we've gone for updating the anonymous on, so now let's do anonymous off. I want to be able to do some kind of theory for this and just have that running the test, but I'm not quite sure how I'd structure the assertion. Because I'd be able to tell whether the event was switched on or not. Perhaps that's telling us something. Perhaps rather than having just a toggle switched on event, I should have a toggle switched on for group, for user, for anonymous, and an off for user, for group and anonymous, rather than having parameters on that. Because then we could test it. We could then just assert that the type is what we expect it to be. I like that, actually. I think let's have a look at the toggle and see how much change it would be. So our actual emission event handler here, so switch on, we would here say if user, then apply a switch on for user event. If group, apply a group, otherwise apply an anonymous. This API would have to change as well. You'd have to have a switch on for group actually, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to. Yeah, that might actually be better. In fact, I think it would be better. So let's do this. Let's go back to that, fix the white space. I'm going to cheat and put that into the previous commit. And now I'm going to refactor the toggles. Also bears in mind the question of, do we have a switch on for everyone method that then overrides the state of anyone else? Maybe, maybe not. Right, so we're going to have switch on for user. Like that. And actually, that needs the user ID. Do I want to do this refactoring first, or do I want to do the other one I've been thinking about, which is the strong typing of user IDs, group IDs, and toggle IDs, so they can't be overwritten on each other? Rider worth the cost compared to Visual Studio? Well, I already had a ReSharper license, so adding Rider to it I think cost me an extra €50 or something. I'd say so. I like it a lot. Windows 10 annoys me a lot, so as more of my projects get over to .NET Core, I shall probably ditch Windows and switch back to using Ubuntu, and just do .NET Core development from there instead. I'll need to check that I can still stream and such under Ubuntu as well. But yeah, I like Rider a lot. It's a lot faster. It's still got rough edges, but it is in early access. And remembering how buggy, say, Visual Studio 2008 was, constantly having to unload and reload projects to make it pick up changes. It's not much worse than that was. The only downside is, like, at work we use local IIS for a lot of websites, and Rider can't talk to local IIS, it can only deal with IIS Express. So that's a negative side, so I do have to use Visual Studio for that. But apart from that, most of the work I do is in Rider. And then Atom for plain text or you know, markdown documents or things that aren't C#, basically. I think I'm actually going to do the other refactoring first. It's strong type things, because I like strong typing. So we're going to add a class or a struct. Let's do the class to start with, a toggle ID. Now, a toggle ID has a constructor which takes in a GUID. Now, these are really easy to implement in something like F#. It's literally like something along the lines of using toggle ID, which is a separate type of GUID. But we're not in a functional language, so we have to implement all of this ourselves. So I do that, and then we need to implement is it equatable or I equality? Yes, I think it's I equatable. Which can be compared to itself, and then we can do that. There we go. And Rider can do all of the work for us. Much better than implementing it ourselves, because, you know, we'd get it wrong. Right. So now we just have to find everywhere that implements toggle ID and replace it with this. Except we can't, because we serialize toggle IDs a lot. So we need serialization to work. So we're going to add a test for it. Toggle ID tests. When serializing and when deserializing. That's about right. Yeah. So we'll do var toggle equals new toggle ID. Now, can you do that? Okay. GUID.new GUID. Now I might actually hide these behind some other methods in a minute. So normally I do something like this, make that private, and we'll have public toggle ID parse, and then either the GUID or the string. But we do this create new, which returns a new toggle ID with a GUID in it, and public toggle ID parse string. We'll force a GUID for the time being. GUID ID new toggle ID. Right. because now people don't have to worry that it's actually implemented with a GUID anywhere. Just a toggle ID dot create new. Oh, it would help if I actually made those static. Voila. So we now want to serialize it and check that we get the same value. So in fact, we're not going to bother with the deserializing test. Not yet anyway. And we'll do JSON convert serialize object toggle, and immediately do var deserialized equals JSON convert deserialize object toggle ID. Let's put that in a variable as well. Right, this will fail because JSON won't, Newtonsoft won't know how to load the thing. So toggle ID should be, or no, deserialized should be toggle. Now, not only is this going to fail because JSON won't know how to handle the fact that there's a private constructor, it'll also fail because we're going to end up with a weird syntax, and what we want to do is check that we get the exact syntax we're after. So when serializing, we'll call this one serializing and deserializing. And in this case, we're going to generate the JSON first. No, we'll do this. Var toggle equals toggle ID parse GUID var GUID equals GUID dot new GUID. Now we're going to serialize an anonymous object and then check that the value is what we want. So var JSON equals JSON convert serialize object new thing prop equals toggle. And now we're going to assert that the JSON we get out should be in the format that we're after, which is this. Slash quote prop now I want, well, this is where things get fun. If we do that, let me put a second quote there and a second one of those, we can then put that in there and do GUID. Right, that's explaining the form of JSON that I want to get out of it. I want it to be treated as a string, but I know full well it won't be. So these tests will fail. .NET test source crispin.tests crispin.tests. So we just need to implement a custom JSON converter to handle that. Yep, and we get fails as expected. So in this case we just got an empty object because it doesn't know how to read anything. The value is only stored internally rather than the GUID that we wanted. And this test couldn't work out how to deserialize it, I think. Unable to find a constructor. Yeah. So let's implement our custom serializer. Public class toggle ID converter, which is a JSON converter. Right, so we have three methods. The first one is canConvert. It's a nice easy one to implement. and we will just say object type double equals type of toggle ID. Right, now we need to be able to write our JSON and read it. So writing it should be fine. We'll just do write string. Is it write string? Let's do write value. Write value, there we are. Now we need to be able to get at our toggle ID, which is only internal to the toggle. So we'll do this. Override toString, return toString. Do that and make that an expression body as well. Value dot toString. Some nice editor lag going on there. And then our read JSON. So reader.value, that's our string. So the first thing we want to do is make it into a GUID. So we do GUID.parse reader value. Let's do this convert toString. In fact, let's do try parse as well. That way we can handle our error case straight off the bat. Try parse, string input, GUID output. So GUID if that return toggle ID parse GUID. Otherwise, return null. Make that an out parameter. Do that. Right, and the only other thing to do is actually apply this to the class. So we can say JSON is that the attribute? Yeah. Type of toggle ID converter. So now when we run these tests, they should both pass. Or I've implemented it wrong, one of the two. Oh, that's a lot of errors. I bet when I used Rider to add the reference that didn't add it correctly. Let's have a look at this. Yeah, that's an interesting way of adding the reference. In fact, it's not right at all. It's a package reference. And as I don't want to mess it up, I'll use the package manager to fix that. Actually, let's have a look at the solution. Do we have any versions elsewhere? Just the implicit one that's in netcore. Hi Wolfie, I'm fine, how are you doing? A few alcohols down. Ah, I've had a cup of tea. That doesn't quite count as alcohol, I don't think. But I have slept basically the entire day, so that's always a good thing. Right, hopefully the tester... Tea and gin? Why would you spoil either of those things by combining them? Yeah, not convinced by tea and gin. Yeah, no, not convinced by that. Right, fingers crossed this time it will actually work now that we've got the right kind of reference to Newtonsoft. One of the guys I used to work with said that in Pakistan, one of the drinks they used to have to refresh them was a mix of 50% Sprite and 50% milk. And I could never quite get over the waste of Sprite enough to try it. He claimed it was very nice and refreshing, so yeah. Right, so our test is now failing, but it's only failing due to spacing, which is nice. So let's remove our surplus spacing. No, not that, that, and that. And I'm not sure what the other one's problem was. Or maybe it's the same one. Yeah, I think it's the same test actually. Yeah, one test failure. It even makes the milk sugary. Yeah, and Finnish milk is too sweet anyway. English milk, best milk. Right, so we've now got that working. I'm going to ignore that error because it's not really there, so right. Yep. Toggle ID. Implement strong typed toggle ID. Right, now comes the fun part. We now actually have to take this into use. So we'll start off with our toggle class. That's a toggle controller, not a toggle. That's interesting. We have an aggregate root GUID. That's going to cause problems. Maybe not. Maybe. Sure, that's annoying. So we're going to have to solve this one with the aggregate root ID. Now in our case, as we're controlling the whole stack, including the saving, we should be able to get away with just making it generic, I think. Like that. I don't know if this will work or not. Because the event then needs the right kind of ID. Maybe. Do that. That becomes that. I don't actually know what kind of milk I'm buying. I know I've been buying the same one ever since I've got here though. All I did was make sure that it was semi-skimmed and not, you know, full fat or fat-free. Yeah, this is going to be annoying. Well, I only actually have one aggregate in the whole system at the moment. So in fact, I could just do this. Hardcode it to a toggle ID, and then worry about refactoring it to support multiple different types of IDs later if it ever actually happens. Just do that. And see how much fails when I build. Create a response. Right, so all of our responses now need to have an actual toggle ID in them. Is that happening? Nope. Nope. This, however, has a toggle ID in a request. And that now is broken. It needs to be that. Oh, didn't want to click that. That. You need to think toggle ID might not have been the best place to start, but oh well. What's your problem? Toggle created. Yep. Come back to the controller in a minute. Yep, all these. That's fine. That just needs to be a toggle ID. Right. Should have done this from the start, really. Oh well, live and learn. Only 2 errors, that seems optimistic. So instead of that we do toggle ID dot create new. There's got to be more errors than 2. It's probably just failing before it gets to the test project. Yeah, that's quite a few more errors than 2. I mean, technically that's accurate. It shouldn't be an empty GUID. We don't have an overload for empty, but we could do. So just do the same thing. It's a property, isn't it? That new toggle GUID.empty. That's not the space that I was looking at. Should not be toggle ID. Can't just find replacement GUID new GUID because I use it all over the place. Oh well, we can do it in a single file. Do that again. Toggle ID is a toggle ID. Should be, yeah, so it's the same thing. So you definitely can't do it because that one is a legitimate usage. There. Right, what do we have here? There's yeah, we can replace all of those. Yeah, yeah. And we're getting there at least. Should not be toggle ID empty. And with luck, I mean, when I run this, all the tests will still pass. I mean, with luck. They won't, no way. I wonder if .NET can figure out that's what I want it to do with the GUID. Can I do that? Will that work? Tempted to stick to that and just put GUID pass and do the parse here. Yeah. Do that. That, and those aren't real errors, right? Ah, missed one. Right. Once this all actually compiles, let's run the tests and see what happens. God damn it. Just when you think you've got them all. Oh yeah, rest test, I suppose. Toggle ID equals toggle create new. That's not a real error. I don't think. No, definitely not a real error, right? Yep, so we'll do this instead. Toggle ID equals GUID.newGUID, and that one now becomes toggle ID.parse toggle ID. Do that. Now that we've got that available, these ones where we actually call getState, which doesn't exist yet, that's fine. Thought we implemented the thing to get rid of that. Okay, we'll need to check that. When the node doesn't exist, receive that with... No, that one should still be that, but it needs to be parsed. Toggle parse, because it's a different GUID. Same thing again. That was toggle ID parse. We'll also need to actually write some tests to check that we have a quality comparison. I thought I-equatable was all I needed to implement. Clearly I'm wrong. Ah, I know what it is. When it breaks. The hell was that? Sounded like someone just dropped a building outside my window. They all passed? That seems unlikely. Do that, that'll run all of the tests. Because I've realised the bit that I haven't implemented is I haven't overridden or implemented the static operator overloads, which I can never remember the syntax for. Public static operator. Bool operator equals. Oh, I was hoping operators were in. Oh yeah, equality members. I'm in the wrong place, but you know. Toggle ID. Generate code. Equality members. Can't. Oh, that's annoying. Can never remember the blasted syntax for operator overloads. Which is why I wrote a blog post about it. Oh, no, I don't have the operator overloads in that either. Blast C# operator overloading. Just need the syntax. I don't know. No. Operator full. There we are. I was close. Oh, that's the wrong class again. Right. Toggle ID. And in our case, do I need to care if they're null? Or can I just do this? Return toggle dot. Oh, that's not the. God damn it. Yeah, so if either of them are null, quality, hang on, is it if either of them are null? If either of them are null, returns true or false. Returns db null if either operand is db null. That doesn't help me. What I want is the Stack Overflow answer, which will be, you know, the most helpful one. Ironically, adding Stack Overflow could also give me things. Ah, thank you, Usermantu. Now, just need to know the semantics of it. If both types are null or both of the same instance, return true. If one is null but not both, return false. Otherwise, compare the fields. Right. That's easy enough. Oh, in fact, it's the same logic as this. Pretty much. Ish. X, Y. And that's probably complaining just because that. There we go. Right. If either are null, return false. And you have to cast it to null to object first, because otherwise you end up calling your own method. Yeah, that makes sense. I'll call them back. And do that. And then return x equals y. And that will use our own actual equals method. Now, can I get away within this? Just doing can I do return not? No, probably not. Do that. Did those tests pass? 12 failed, yeah, that makes sense. Right. If either is null, yeah, I'm thinking I might need some implicit ones as well. Oh, you can do that. That makes things easier, rather than trying to work out the negations. It's not something I often have to do, writing operators, and so I just forget it, because at the end of the day you can find MSDN and Stack Overflow the right answer. And I might as well fill my head with more complicated things that I need on a more daily basis. Right, so now that we've got the static operators as well, now all of our tests should pass. Yeah, I don't care about warnings really, especially as this weird type converter thing. Oh, 17 passed. Hooray, all passed. Naughty. Oh, I was going to say no bad white space, but in fact, only a little. Toggle. Replace GUIDs with toggle ID. And tomorrow we will come back and do the same thing, but for the user ID and the group ID properties. Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those many things that I've never managed to make stick in my head. Like what numbers go with what months. I still don't know those. I know like some of them, but no matter how much I try and remember them, I can never remember any month after about May up until November. I have no idea what the numbers go with those months. I have to say them off in my head and count them on my fingers each time. Because it's just not something my brain has decided is worth remembering. Right. So I think that's it for this evening. Considering I've been... Well, I haven't made any finished keyboard mistakes for like 2.5 hours, so that's amazing. Don't do that. That will confuse me at some point. You know, December should technically be 10 because it's got deck in it. Damn Julius Caesar and who's the other one? Julius Caesar and Augustus putting their names in as months because they wanted them. Shoved all the other month names off by 1 and then 2. Blasted Romans. Anyway, yeah, so that was moderately successful development, I think, this evening. We've got a few more API methods and we've strong typed some stuff. Code's up on GitHub, and if you've got any questions, Twitch chat, GitHub, or send me a message on Twitter. My username is Ponderdom on everything. And yeah, probably see you tomorrow for the next one. So thanks for watching. Program chose the month numbers January would be naught. Yes, it would. Unless they thought that 1 based indexes would be a good idea.